Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's request comes from Fabian. Hello, I'm Fabilicious, and this is my special selection, Guantanamo. I've got some other songs out, even with a music video, but you're searching for original compositions, and from my new album, Waco Paco, I think it's one of the highlights. So let's get into this. We got Fabilicious's Guantanamo. Let's see what they're bringing to the table today. So we got a 5/4 idea going on here. Well, it depends on how you count it. I can also feel a 4. The drums are giving a 4, but that chirpy synth is giving a 5. Okay. Interesting combination of tones. It's kind of poppy.
Dancing go-go, Flashes playing solos in Guantanamo. Look, joy is all around us. Squads are driving me fast. Goodbye, hits the post. Girls are dancing go-go. Slashes playing solos in Guantanamo.
Yeah, okay.
The Blut, but the meeting so much boogers bear giving hand in my fucking bear. I'm Fabilicious, boogers are delicious and lashes like set vicious. Set vicious. Now gas to riches. The party is on, I'm singing this song. What this fuck can be wrong?
Layered textures. Alright.
Squads are driving me fast. Goodbye, hits the holes. Girls are dancing go-go. Slashes flying solos in Guantanamo.
Yeah. Yeah, so a pretty catchy riff there at the end in the electronic sound. That's weird. It's definitely the end of the song. In fact, Apple Music right now says I'm at minute 3:31 out of a 3:29 song. Like it started over for some reason. Anyways, let's talk about the music though. Not of Apple being weird. I'm divided on it because I think musically it's interesting, and that's what I want to touch on first. But we're gonna get into something afterwards that I think needs a little bit of work. the sheer variety here and mixing of genres, I am totally here for though. It has a little bit of pop punk, it has a little bit of heavier rock, maybe even a little bit of lighter metal. We have some harsh vocals, we have cleaner vocals that are kind of pop punk style, very forward placed. We also have a rapping bit that's spoken word, and that is actually, if I remember right, that was wrapped over the heavy guitars, which is just, I mean, there's so many really cool combination of ideas here. It does feel a bit segmented, but I think when you start doing something like this, it's going to be difficult for the music to be uh cohesive or feeling more cohesive. You're really going for an everything in the kitchen sink kind of vibe, and in much the way as bands like Haken and Between the Buried and Me have done with some of the stuff we've checked out from them, like Aquarium, and Ant the Sky, respectively. There's just no way around it. Once you start putting in so many ideas, disjointedness is going to be a key aspect, and you really have to lean into it. I think if you try to fight it, you might be able to get something that feels a bit more connected throughout, but it's really you're gonna be taking baby steps to get there. It's gonna be a lot of work for a little bit of return. And at some point you just have to lean into what you're doing. And I think that's what's happening here. There is a lot of really disjointed combinations of ideas. It's just a lot of disjointed ideas overall. But you got to lean into that playfulness. You got to lean into it and just be like, this is the music then. Right? There's no great way to move away from uh sort of a uh was it Afro-Cuban sort of rhythm with this bright poppy electronic synthy sound into a pop punk, but if it was done by synthesizers sound, there's just not going to be a way to transition. They're so far apart from each other, and you just got to say, okay, you know what, that's fine. It's going to be segmented, and just lean into that segmentation. Um, and that's what happened here. And I think it's interesting to hear all of these different styles, especially in the combinations that they are. It's clear to me that this group has a lot of influences, and instead of saying, we're only gonna make one style of music, or we'll incorporate them but segment them. We'll have a pure pop punk section, we'll have a pure rap section. As they said, no, you know what? We'll combine them all, and I've got to give props for that 100%. Um, and through that, there's actually things that are catchy here. The pop punk section is catchy both in its uh, very standard chord progression that really makes me feel at home in that section, and sort of the rhythmic cadence in the vocals. The that final synth lick that we had on our final 30 seconds in our track, that was kind of catchy. The metal section actually got me to like groove a little bit with it, and then the rapping over it was very cool. Everything still comes together in a way that is palatable despite how different everything is, and I think that is a huge achievement for this project. Despite all that positivity, though, we got to address the elephant in the room, and that's the production. Maybe this is all intentional. We've listened to some indie rock stuff that goes for that rough around the edges production. And there is a little bit of a charm to it here. Some people might not agree with me, and you guys know I'm usually here for clean production anyways, but there is a little bit of a charm to it. It's not necessarily something I would go out of my way to listen to, but the production kind of works with the chaoticness of the music, but I do feel like every section would be improved with tighter production. Like I said, it's sort of the elephant in the room for me. I enjoyed what was happening musically, but sometimes the vocals lacked the punch I felt like they needed. Sometimes I felt like the instruments weren't as properly EQ'd against the rest of the instruments in the group as they needed to be. I'd even say that there's some vocal leveling that should probably be handled here, as every section feels like it's supposed to be the same volume, but they're not. This isn't a situation where I feel like there's volume dynamics at play in the music, but there are volume dynamics in the production. There are a few lines that I feel like are just a hair bit too quiet and could probably do with bumping up a little bit. It's all small tweaks. The majority of the structure, the foundation of the production is there. It's the little things that I wish I had the experience to properly comment on. This is pretty much the point where my music tends to flail a bit as well, production wise, and I can get it to the point where it sounds okay, but it's missing that oomph to really make every section feel like it's the best that it can be, and that's where an experienced producer or sound engineer comes into play, of which I am not one. Um, so I can't comment exactly what would need to be done, but I hope that you guys can hear that as well. When I say oomph, it's feeling kind of flat. It's missing that bump, that power, that it factor in the production. And again, like I said, it could be intentional. Fabilicious, if you're watching this, and if you enjoy what you're making, completely disregard that. There's multiple different ways to do production. There is no one size fits all. And if a cleaner, punchier production is not what you're aiming for, then disregard this entirely. But at least to my ears, it feels like a lot of the musicality is being replicated very well across all these styles and mixed well with the other styles around them, but the production is not mimicking those styles like they would normally sound in a different context. You go find a pop punk band or an electronic band or a pop band or a metal band, and the production has just a little bit more punch to it across the board than any of the sections are showcased here. I don't know that I have anything else to add beyond that. There isn't a lot of musical depth here. It plays around with a lot of more standard ideas that work with texture. Oh, you know what? There is one thing I want to talk about: the opening. The opening, because like the pop punk is just pretty standard chords underneath the melody line and the vocals. The metal is just a couple of notes chugging along. The rapping, it was actually technical. I enjoyed how we flipped through a couple of metric ideas, so that was pretty cool. Um, but no musical depth there, or no harmonic depth, which is typical for rap. There is that's just a concept that rap doesn't deal with, is notes. But the rhythmic side was interesting. So a lot of those are based on foundational ideas or rhythmic ones, but the beginning was actually cool because we got to hear quite a few different layers. I really enjoyed that. There was, we actually started with a section that felt like it was in 5/4. It was that interesting synth beat that came in at the beginning, and then we added in the Afro-Cuban wood blocks, I think it was. And then we had like a musical layer coming in, and we had the bass, I think, was also doing its own thing, and then we had the vocals come in, and it was very spacious. A lot of room for all these layers. Actually, given what I just talked about production, I think the production actually works really well for this. It's as soon as we introduce bigger layers, the distorted guitars that we hear, or the distorted synths possibly that we hear in the pop punk chorus, and the distorted guitar we hear in the rapping metal section, that's where it starts to feel a bit flat, because I think the distortion, my ears expect larger, bigger sounds because they're distorted, which implies that they're clipping, which my brain interprets as being loud, and it's not. So that might just be a production aspect for those two sections. This opening concept with all of the acoustic instruments, or primarily acoustic instruments, very spacious room, tons of layering, lots of ideas bouncing around the different panning areas. It actually comes together very nicely. I like this section. Um, and it kind of, yeah, I hate to inject myself again, but I'm in the same place. I can produce acoustic instruments very well, but the minute I go towards an electric guitar or a rock or metal style idea, my production is just, it's missing whatever that oomph is that metal and rock producers know how to do. So I'm seeing a lot of myself production wise in this track. Um, but yeah, so that opening idea, though, absolutely love it. The production fits, beautiful layering. We actually get to see some depth to the composition of the team. It really is just after this where everything sort of flattens out musically and leans more into like textures and atmospheres, which is not a bad thing. You're definitely going for the rock and metal vibes after this. So they tend to be more foundational and texture based song styles, especially with the styles that you went for, which is just like basic riffage and chords. Um, so yeah, I think those are all of my thoughts on the music then. It has so much potential. I think that this could be a really big internet hit. I'm interested in checking out the rest of this album. It is, what do we got here? 13 tracks at 36 minutes long. Okay, so our first and last track, we have very short intro and outro. So 11 tracks at 36 minutes, which is still a bit on the short side, but I might check this out just because I'm interested in the combinations of things here. This is not a sound that I hear very often. Um, I do think I would like to hear a little better. Well, I don't want to say better, a stronger production. And maybe that'll come with growth. This released in June of 2022, and it is. Oh no, they also had a 2021 album. Interestingly, Apple lists them as electronica. I can see that, kinda. I don't know. It's Well, anyways, let me wrap this up. Um, Next, we would normally do lyrics, but I could not find any, which typically happens with these smaller groups. They either gotta put it in their description, or I just can't find them. But Apple didn't have them either, which kind of surprised me. So we can't do a lyrical analysis, but oh, structure. Let me touch on structure real quick because this was interesting. We had our A section, which is our Afro-Cuban kind of layered section, and then we had our pop punk idea, and then we had an intermediate section. I don't really remember what happened here. It was very short, and we got right back into the pop punk section, which makes me feel like that's the chorus. It's also where I think I heard the word Guantanamo, which you put the title usually in the chorus, so I'm kind of leaning on that. Um, it was very, we basically had A, B, B, verse, chorus, chorus. And then our second verse was totally different. In fact, in a traditional structure, I would have called it the bridge with how far it deviates. We went from the Afro-Cuban idea to metal with rapping. And then our outro was something we hadn't heard prior at all as well. So, I mean, A, B, B, C, D. I mean, what a wild. I mean, completely linear, but also let's put a chorus in there. A repeated chorus. It's kind of bonkers, but I dig it because that pop punk section is kind of catchy. So make it a hook. Put it in there multiple times. Put it back to back, and then linearly finish the track. Interesting way to go. I think that's the word of the day for this. Is interesting. Very interesting. It does a lot of things I don't typically hear in music. Those are my thoughts on Fabulicious's Guantanamo. That's where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this, anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on. Above the comments, you can head into the description box, and there's a link for Linktree. Takes you to that menu right there. Has links for everything related to the channel. You can find all sorts of stuff, including ways to support the channel and a link to the Discord community. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to finish up this week's theme of unusual song structure, which this fit in really well for, as well as check out not one, but two creator requests. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.